Live from New Delhi, you're watching DD India Newshour, India's voice to the world. I'm Mark Lynn. Namaskar. Coming up in the next hour. The Indian economy clocked 7.4% in the last quarter of FY 24-25, driven by strong investments and consumer spending. The overall fiscal growth is at 6.5%. Indian economy retains fastest growing tag. Prime Minister Modi unveils projects worth $5.7 billion in Bihar, empowers farmers and women, also sends out a strong warning to terrorists. French President Emmanuel Macron pushes for bold Indo-Pacific alliances, warns of escalating US-China divide. Trump signals fresh trade tension with China, says Beijing violated recent trade agreement with the United States. India's economy kept growing steadily in FY 2024-25 with strong performance in key areas like construction, public services and financial activities. People spent more, businesses invested more, and overall economic activity remained healthy despite some ups and downs in different sectors. For the record, India's real GDP grew by 6.5%, showing solid expansion. Meanwhile, nominal GDP rose by 9.8% thanks to stable inflation and strong household spending. More on this report.
India's real GDP grew by 6.5% in FY 2024-25, reflecting a steady expansion in economic activity. The nominal GDP has recorded a growth rate of 9.8%, influenced by stable inflationary trends and improved domestic consumption. Now, the real GDP is the total value of all goods and services produced in a country, adjusted for inflation, while nominal GDP is the total market value of all goods and services measured at current market prices. In quarter 4 of FY 2024-25, real GDP growth reached 7.4%, while nominal GDP surged by 10.8%, indicating a strong finish to the fiscal year. The construction sector experienced robust growth, recording a 9.4% expansion for the full fiscal year. In quarter 4, the sector saw an accelerated growth rate of 10.8%, driven by increased infrastructure spending and urban development projects. Public administration, defense, and other services achieved an 8.9% growth rate in FY 2024-25, supported by higher government expenditure and policy-driven investments. Financial, real estate, and professional services recorded a 7.2% growth in FY 2024-25, fueled by strong financial market activity and an expanding real estate segment. 7.8% growth in quarter 4 reflects sustained momentum in banking and investment services. The primary sector comprising agriculture, mining, and quarrying witnessed a 4.4% growth rate, significantly improving from 2.7% in the previous year due to favorable monsoon conditions and increased agricultural productivity. In quarter 4, the sector saw a 5% growth rate, a sharp rise from 0.8% in quarter 4 of FY 2023-24, signaling a recovery from earlier fluctuations. Private final consumption expenditure, or direct consumption of goods and services by individuals, grew by 7.2% in FY 2024-25 compared to 5.6% in the previous fiscal year, indicating rising consumer confidence and increased household spending. Gross fixed capital formation, or investment in fixed assets, remained strong, recording a 7.1% growth rate for the fiscal year. It was 9.4% in quarter 4, reflecting higher private and public sector investments in infrastructure and industrial expansion. India is preparing itself for new dynamics in the economic world order.
I think for the next 10 to 15 years, that is why ensuring supply chain security rather than supply chain efficiency is going to be the driving force. I think the world is going to be divided into, if not multiple blocks, but at least 2 blocks. Whether it is with respect to trade or with respect to investment, and that is something we need to get used to.
The GDP growth rate of FY 2024-25 highlights consistent growth across major sectors, particularly construction, public services, and financial activities. Improved private consumption and capital formation signal a strong economic outlook despite fluctuations in certain sectors. Bureau Report, DD India.
The CII Annual Business Summit outlines some bold economic and energy ideas, emphasizing skill development and green energy as key drivers of growth. Now, the country is focused on building a Viksit Bharat through innovation, industry and inclusion. Let's look at this report.
At the CII Annual Business Summit 2025 in New Delhi, key union ministers laid out India's bold roadmap for economic and energy transformation. Union Petroleum Minister Hardeep Singh Puri announced that over 1 million square kilometers of sedimentary basins, once considered no-go zones, have been opened up for exploration. As a result, 30% of bids under the open acreage licensing policy now come from these new areas.
We have about 3.5 million square kilometers of sedimentary basin, out of which 1 million was what is called a no-go area. It's been opened up. Now, if you look at the open area licensing policy, open acreage licensing policy, OALP, round 9, I think 37-38% of the bids came in that area which is opened up. And I think the next round, 10th round, which is now being processed, I think even most of them will end up here.
Puri highlighted India's shift towards a cleaner, more secure energy future, powered by reforms in oil and gas exploration, expanded natural gas infrastructure, and ambitious goals in biofuels and green hydrogen. He also pointed to the huge potential of sustainable aviation fuel, that's SAF, in India and globally as well. Meanwhile, Niti Aayog CEO BVR Subramaniam outlined 4 essential transformations for India to become a developed nation: urbanization, energy transition, education reform, and a manufacturing revolution. He announced the National Manufacturing Mission as a unified body to steer India's path to a 7.5 trillion manufacturing GDP by 2047.
First transformation is rural to urban. If you want to become a developed nation, our level of urbanization is very, very low. The second transformation we need to do is the energy transformation. I'm sure there are people who are engaged with that. We have to have an energy transition on a massive side. The third transition which we need to do is a transformation of our education system. At the end of the day, growth in itself means nothing if it doesn't make sense to individuals. The big one is the manufacturing transformation. The rural transformation to urban is largely dependent on the transformation of manufacturing.
Union Minister Mansukh Mandavia emphasized industry-led skill development. Cluster-based industrial training institutes are being launched, guided by the industry's needs. India's future is being built today, with energy, innovation, and a skilled workforce at the center. Tapas Bhattacharya's report, DD India.
Prime Minister Modi launched over $5.7 billion in projects in Bihar, warned terrorists as well in Pakistan, and he praised India's daughters for their strength. He announced the modernization of Patna Airport, fulfilled a long-standing public demand, and introduced a Makhana board with a GI tag benefiting farmers. Let's look at this report.
The promise that Prime Minister Narendra Modi made on April 24th from the soil of Bihar to teach a lesson to terrorists and their handlers has been upheld. After fulfilling that pledge, PM Modi once again declared from the same land that if the hood of terror rises again, India will drag it out of its den and crush it. From Karakat, PM Modi sent out a strong message that the government's fight is against the enemies of the nation, whether they are across the border or within the country.
बीते वर्षों में हमने हिंसा और अशांति फैलाने वालों का कैसे खात्मा किया है, बिहार के लोग इसके साक्षी हैं। हमने माओवादियों को उनके किया की सजा देनी शुरू की। हम युवाओं को विकास की मुख्य धारा में भी लेकर आए। 11 सालों की दृढ़ प्रतिज्ञा का फल आज देश को मिलना शुरू हुआ है।
Taking a jibe at the opposition, the Prime Minister remarked that those who have deceived Bihar the most are now using false narratives of social justice to regain power. He highlighted that during their rule, Bihar's poor and marginalized communities were forced to leave the state in search of basic livelihood.
गरीब को लूटना, उनके अधिकारों को लूटना, उनकी मजबूरी का फायदा उठाना और खुद राजाशाही की मौज करना। बिहार के आप लोगों को जंगल राज वालों के झूठ और धोखे, उससे आगे भी सावधान रहना बहुत जरूरी है।
Emphasizing the extraordinary valor and indomitable courage displayed by the Border Security Force personnel, India's frontier guards, during Operation Sindoor, PM Modi said the world has witnessed their unbreakable shield of security and unparalleled bravery in their duty of protecting the nation. He also paid tribute to BSF Sub-Inspector Mohammad Imtiaz, who was martyred on May 10th while fulfilling his duty at the border, expressing his deep respect for Bihar's brave son. Earlier, Prime Minister Modi inaugurated several projects and laid the foundation stones of multiple development initiatives worth over $5.70 billion at Karakat. These projects will boost industrial growth, create job opportunities, and provide affordable electricity in the region. With Bureau Inputs, Rajesh Raje's report for DD India.
The Prime Minister was in Uttar Pradesh's Kanpur on Friday, where he laid the foundation stone and inaugurated 15 development projects worth over 47,573 crore rupees, which is about 5.6 billion US dollars, aimed at boosting the region's infrastructure and connectivity. He also flagged off Kanpur Metro's new corridor between Chunniganj and Nayaganj. Now, this section of the Kanpur Metro Rail project is worth over 2,120 crore rupees. And the metro section includes 14 planned stations with 5 new underground stations, integrating key city landmarks and commercial hubs into the metro network. Prime Minister Narendra Modi also distributed Ayushman cards to beneficiaries over the age of 70 years. And addressing the gathering, the Prime Minister said that the world witnessed the country's righteous anger against terrorism in the form of Operation Sindoor.
पाकिस्तान का स्टेट और नॉन स्टेट एक्टर, ये अब खेल चलने वाला नहीं है। अगर मैं सीधे सीधी कानपुरिया में कहूं तो दुश्मन कहीं भी हो, हौंक दिया जाएगा।
Prime Minister Narendra Modi on Friday had an emotional meeting with the family of Shubham Dwivedi, a 31-year-old businessman who was among those killed in the April 22 terror attack in Pahalgam. The Prime Minister, while meeting Shubham's family at Kanpur Airport, offered his condolences and assured full government support. The Defence Minister Rajnath Singh, on board INS Vikrant, warned Pakistan of the Indian Navy's unmatched strength, stating that if the Navy had actively engaged in Operation Sindoor, Pakistan's fate could have been worse than in 1971, possibly leading to further division. During his visit to INS Vikrant in the Arabian Sea, Rajnath Singh reviewed operational readiness, interacted with the naval personnel, and he praised the Navy's role in neutralizing threats. He emphasized the Navy's dominance, which prevented Pakistan from challenging India at sea. Rajnath Singh sent a stern message, asserting that India no longer tolerates aggression. It now responds with swift and decisive action.
पहलगाम में हुए कायराना आतंकी हमले के बाद जब भारत ने ऑपरेशन सिंदूर प्रारंभ किया तो हमारी आर्म्ड फोर्सेज ने जिस गति, गहराई और स्पष्टता के साथ कार्रवाई की, मैं मानता हूं वह अपने में अद्भुत था, वह बेमिसाल था। उसने न केवल आतंकवादियों की बल्कि उन्हें पालने पोसने वाले सरपरस्तों को भी यह स्पष्ट संदेश दे दिया है कि भारत अब सहन नहीं करता है, भारत अब सीधा जवाब देता है। जब उसी समय में हमने पाकिस्तान के आतंकी अड्डे और उसके इरादों को ध्वस्त कर दिया, हमारा प्रहार इतना तगड़ा था कि पाकिस्तान पूरी दुनिया से भारत को रोकने की गुहार लगाने लगा था।
When India's Home Minister Amit Shah on Friday asserted that the developmental journey of Jammu and Kashmir will move forward relentlessly despite recent provocations along the border. During his visit to Jammu and Kashmir's Poonch, the Home Minister interacted with Border Security Force personnel at their unit headquarters in Kanethar, and he praised their role in Operation Sindoor. Now, the minister also met families affected by the recent Pakistani shelling and distributed appointment letters to the next of kin of civilians who were killed during these attacks. Referring to the recent terror attack in Pahalgam, the Home Minister commended the people of Jammu and Kashmir for their standing united against terrorism.
पहली बार भारत की सेनाओं ने पाकिस्तान की सीमा के अंदर खड़े हुए आतंकवादी संगठनों के हेडक्वार्टर को ध्वस्त कर दिया और एक करारा जवाब समग्र भारत की जनता की ओर से नरेंद्र मोदी जी के दृढ़ राजनीतिक इच्छा शक्ति से लिए गए निर्णय, हमारी सूचना एजेंसियों की सटीक सूचना और सेना का अद्भुत साहस और अचूक मारक क्षमता, इसके कारण ये हुआ।
And still to come here on DD India Newshour. Turkey proposes to host the Trump-Putin-Zelensky summit. Israel announces new West Bank settlements. Geopolitics and trade deals. Economic challenges amid development. Hard work and the path to prosperity. It's the economy always. Between walkers, money is what money does and says. Supply creates its own demand. Between the bulls pulls and bears tears. When supply chains globalization and India rises to the podium. We'll get you centered with the economic brief at 8 p.m. every Thursday on DD India. You're watching DD India Newshour. I'm Mark Lynn. The US President Donald Trump signaled renewed trade tensions with China, saying that Beijing has violated its agreement with the United States. Trump wrote in a post on Truth Social platform that 2 weeks ago, China was in grave economic danger. The very high tariffs I set made it virtually impossible for China to trade into the United States' marketplace, which is by far the #1 in the world. Trump further said, and I quote, "I made a fast deal with China in order to save them from what I thought was going to be a very bad situation. And I didn't want to see that happen. Because of this deal, everything quickly stabilized and China got back to business as usual. Everybody was happy. That is the good news. The bad news is that China, perhaps not surprisingly to some, has totally violated its agreement with us, with the United States, that is. So much for being Mr. Nice Guy." Well, the Federal Appeals Court has temporarily reinstated the former president, has formally reinstated President Trump's tariffs, overturning the trade court's ruling that had in fact blocked them. The tariffs were the former tariffs is what we were talking about. Now, the trade court had in fact previously determined that Trump exceeded his authority in imposing these duties. Meanwhile, the U.S. Treasury Secretary has stated that trade negotiations between the United States and China remain stalled. To move forward, presidents of both countries would need to engage in direct talks. Let's look at this report.
US President Donald Trump celebrated a temporary reprieve as an appeals court on Thursday preserved his aggressive tariff strategy of imposing sweeping import duties on China and other trading partners for now. The United States Court of Appeals in Washington said it was pausing the lower court's order to consider the government's appeal and ordered all parties involved to file their statements by June 9th. Just a day earlier, a trade court had blocked them, ruling that Trump had overstepped his authority and gave the White House 10 days to halt the import taxes. The Court of Appeals for the Federal Circuit granted an emergency motion filed by the Trump administration, which argued that lifting the tariffs would harm the country's national security. White House advisor Peter Navarro said Trump administration is ready to take its appeal to the Supreme Court.
The tariffs remain in place. The court told us, they didn't all but tell us, they told us, go do it another way. So you can assume that even if we lose, we will do it another way. And I can assure the American people that the Trump tariff agenda is alive, well, healthy, and will be implemented to protect you, to save your jobs and your factories, and to stop shipping foreign wealth, our wealth into foreign hands.
Meanwhile, U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent stated in an interview with Fox News that trade negotiations between the United States and China are a bit stalled, and reaching a final agreement will likely require direct talks between U.S. President Donald Trump and Chinese President Xi Jinping.
I would say that they are a bit stalled. I believe that we will be having more talks with them in the next few weeks, and I believe we may at some point have a call between the president and party chair Xi.
Reacting to Bessent's comments, Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesperson Lin Jian said Beijing had stated its position on the tariffs issue many times in an apparent reference to China's fury at the levies. Washington and Beijing agreed this month to pause the reciprocal tariffs war for 90 days, a surprise de-escalation in their bitter trade war following talks between top officials in Geneva. Back-and-forth court orders that violated, then reinstated President Trump's tariffs have injected a fresh dose of uncertainty into global markets. Wall Street futures slipped on Friday as investors took stock of appeals court decision to undo a prior ruling. Asian shares also fell, reversing a rally across the world markets the previous day as the judicial wrangling around Trump's on-again, off-again tariffs fanned uncertainty. Bureau Report, DD India.
Turkey on Friday proposed hosting a summit with the leaders of Russia, Ukraine and the United States as it strives to broker an elusive deal to end the Russia-Ukraine conflict. Turkey's Foreign Minister Hakan Fidan, who visited Kiev on Friday, said that his country sincerely thinks that it is possible to cap the first and the second direct Istanbul talks with a meeting between Trump, Putin and Zelensky. Now, Fidan also met Ukraine's Foreign Minister Andriy Sybiga in Kiev. And earlier this week, he had also had talks with Putin in Moscow. Now, the Kremlin repeated on Friday that it would hand over its version at the talks on Monday, but Kiev is pressuring Moscow to send a copy in advance.
We believe that it is possible to hold the next round of meetings based on the decision of principle taken by the parties in Istanbul. Therefore, I want to express once again here in your presence that we are ready to host the subsequent talks.
The government has approved 22 new Jewish settlements in the occupied West Bank, its finance minister said on Thursday. Bezalel Smotrich, an ultra-nationalist in the ruling right-wing coalition, who has long advocated for Israeli sovereignty over the West Bank, wrote on X that the settlements would be located in the northern West Bank, without specifying exactly where. Israeli media cited the defense ministry as saying that among the new settlements, existing outposts would be legalized under Israeli law and new settlements would also be built. The US plan for Gaza proposes a 60-day ceasefire and the release of 28 Israeli hostages, alive and dead, in the first week in exchange for the release of 1,236 Palestinian prisoners and the remains of 180 dead Palestinians. The document, which says the plan is guaranteed by US President Donald Trump and mediators Egypt and Qatar, includes sending humanitarian aid to Gaza as soon as Hamas signs off on the ceasefire agreement. The White House said on Thursday that Israel had agreed to the US ceasefire proposal. The Palestinian militant group Hamas said it had received the Israeli response to the proposal, which it said fails to meet any of the just and legitimate demands of our people, unquote, including an immediate cessation of hostilities and an end to the humanitarian crisis in Gaza. The French President Emmanuel Macron said on Friday that division between the United States and China is the main risk currently confronting the world, as he emphasized the need for building new coalitions between Paris and partners in the Indo-Pacific. Speaking at the Shangri-La Dialogue in Singapore, the French president said Asia and Europe have a common interest in preventing the disintegration of the global order. The French leader also warned that if the United States and Europe were not able to bring an end to Russia's war in Ukraine, it would impact their credibility in the Indo-Pacific region as well.
I do consider that rejecting double standards in all these affairs do not imply balancing everything, but very clearly requires us to be very consistent in this approach. And I insist on that because I do believe that the main risk today is a risk of division of the world and a division between the two superpowers. And the instruction given to all the others, you have to choose your side. If we do so, we will kill the global order, and we will destroy, methodically, all the institutions we created after the Second World War in order to preserve peace and to have cooperation on health, on climate, on human rights, and so on. But we need them, probably much more than before.
An all-party Indian parliamentary delegation currently in Jakarta held a key meeting with Indonesia's top Islamic body today. I beg your pardon. As part of their regional outreach to promote peace and counter-terrorism. The delegation also paid tribute to Mahatma Gandhi, met with the Indian diaspora and held discussions on strengthening bilateral ties. The delegation met the Nahdlatul Ulema to address extremism and regional harmony, highlighting the threat of misusing religion to justify violence. They visited the Mahatma Gandhi Memorial and engaged Indian community groups there on anti-terror efforts, also stronger bilateral ties. The former External Affairs Minister, Salman Khurshid, welcomed Indonesia's support, while India's ambassador to Indonesia, Sandeep Chakravarti, expressed optimism that the talks would lead to concrete action. The visit concluded with a press conference before the delegation left for Malaysia.
Our takeaway is that we could not have asked for more in terms of our friends here in Indonesia. We feel almost like we are looking into a mirror. When we look at Indonesia, we see the experience of Indonesia with terrorism, our experience with terrorism, and the spontaneous support and condolence that we received. Now it's a question of us working together to find more effective steps that need to be taken against the terrorists that are supported by Pakistan.
It is incumbent on me and my team to work on them, on counter-terrorism cooperation, on training, on greater exchanges, on inter-parliamentary exchanges, on understanding the de-radicalization agenda in Indonesia, cooperation between our anti-terror organizations and agencies. I think there's lots that can be done, and we look forward to working more closely with Indonesia. We are also very hopeful that Indonesia will support us in forums where we are not present.
The all-party delegation led by the DMK MP Khani Modi, who is in Riga, Latvia, held meetings with delegations from Latvia in the Latvian Parliament, and the delegation from the Latvian side is also being led by the chairperson of the Foreign Affairs Committee in the Latvian Parliament. On Friday, an all-party delegation led by the BJP MP Ravi Shankar Prasad visited the Danish Parliament alongside the Deputy Speaker Lars Christian Brask. And the leaders, they gathered to discuss terrorism and strengthening bilateral ties. Among those present were Christian Friis-Bach, the chairperson of Denmark's Foreign Policy Committee, and the Danish MP Trine Pertumark. Now, speaking at the occasion and also to the media, Ravi Shankar Prasad appreciated Denmark's solidarity with India, and he noted that it was the first country to express support.
We had a wonderful meeting with him. He understood the problem of terrorism, conveyed his views, and what we appreciate is Denmark was the first to convey solidarity.
Now, India's Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman addressed the Lakshmipat Singhania IIM Lucknow National Leadership Awards in New Delhi on Friday. She highlighted strong growth seen in India's industry and manufacturing sectors, with the country continuing to grow as the fastest growing major economy for the fourth consecutive year.
I'm glad, and I'm sure many of you all would have already seen it. India's industry, the manufacturing activity, have all been so good during quarter four, and quarter four's growth alone was 7.4%, and the data has come out today. And as a result, for the entire financial year of 24-25, March 31st, 25, which has just gone by, 2 months, we've just completed 2 months. The GDP numbers are 6.5.
And Anil Padmanabhan, senior journalist who has been covering business affairs for more than 30 years, is joining us. Thank you very much, Mr. Padmanabhan. So, you know, what sectors contributed most, you think, to this growth? And what do you think? I mean, how did they impact the overall performance?
The best part about these Q4 numbers are that most of the sectors have performed extremely well, barring exports, which is for obvious reasons. But manufacturing has done well, agriculture has done well, and more importantly, gross fixed capital formation, which is basically the capital formation in the economy, which is what will determine the growth momentum in the future, has grown by about 6%, which is very impressive. All of this is more impressive given the circumstance in which this economic growth record of sorts has been managed. We know that since 2020, the world and India have been facing extremely inclement times. Never before in the economic history of the world have we seen 5 back-to-back such incidents which have rocked the world economy, including India's. So this performance is extremely credible.
Mr. Padmanabhan, how does a growth rate of 6.5%, because it's seen by some, you know, as a 4-year low, compare favorably with other emerging and large economies?
Mark, compared to, in terms of sheer growth rates, not the economic size, this growth rate is among the best in the world. Maybe a one-odd country might be slightly better. So to say that it's a 4-year low is a complete, I mean, it's mathematically right, but a misnomer. Like I just explained to you, the context that we are getting a 6.5% growth is most inclement, unprecedented. And let's not forget that we are in the middle of an ongoing conflict with our troublesome Western neighbor. So these are very difficult circumstances, and to deliver such a good growth is extremely impressive. You should be proud about it and talk about it.
Also, Mr. Padmanabhan, what role did private consumption play in the GDP growth? Because what does 7.2% growth in private financial consumption expenditure actually say about our consumer behavior?
Mark, that's a very important metric because for the first 6 months of the last fiscal year, there were, for a host of reasons, including the ongoing general election, everything took a hit. Government consumption, private consumption, particularly urban areas, was hurting because of a continued phase of high inflation. But what we have seen in the last 6 months is a recovery in that consumption. Of course, it's been led by agriculture and the rural sector, but the good news is that even consumption in urban areas is on the mend. And now the IMD has just forecast an above normal monsoon.
Right.
It's in fact a fantastic early onset. So if you club this with the economic momentum we are seeing, and we are looking at the onset of the festival season in September, October, so consumption is actually going to grow from here on. May not accelerate dramatically, but it's definitely not going to be flatlining.
Also, what are the reasons then for construction and public administration sectors also performing well?
Mark, for public administration, one key reason is, like I mentioned earlier, in the first 6 months of the last fiscal year, government spending had taken a hit. But in the second half, they kind of caught up with what almost. So that is what you're seeing manifest in the numbers that you just mentioned.
Right. Also about construction then, what about construction?
Construction again, Mark, because of the capital formation in the economy.
Yes,
And, in easing of inflation, the rollout of fresh investments, we are not really surprised, and real estate has also been picking up. So you connect all these dots and we are not really surprised that construction has picked up.
Mr. Padmanabhan, so what are the implications then? We've seen from October it was 6.2, then it's now 7.4, the Q3, Q4. So we're looking at some sort of pickup and momentum. What can we expect in FY 25-26 then?
Look, it's very difficult to hazard for the full year, but broadly we would stick to about 6.5%, which is what even the Reserve Bank of India and the Government of India are projecting. So, which is a very healthy growth rate because it will be on top of 6.5%. But if the global economic situation improves, or if Trump tariffs begin to see some level of sanity, then you're going to get an unexpected boost from the export side too. So you may actually err on the upside. So I believe that 6.5 would be the base, and we could look at a slightly higher growth rate, but it would even 6.5%. Please keep in mind the extremely inclement times. It will be an extremely impressive growth once again.
And what are the prospects also for the industrial sector, for manufacturing? Services we know are doing well, but also given the fact that you mentioned certain external factors, what about services and the exports of services?
Look, export of services has already reached a peak. Given the global situation, if we maintain that, that's great news. But in terms of domestic manufacturing, there are a lot of good tailwinds which are emerging. One, the Reserve Bank of India has already initiated a rate cut cycle, which means cost of capital will go down, particularly your working capital. There's also a sustained effort to make sure small and medium sector, which is a key part of the Indian economy, gets access to better credit, particularly working capital. So, and what I just mentioned earlier, that the capital formation of the economy is doing pretty well, is growing at 6%. All of this augur a good investment, decent investment momentum. And again, I'd like to flag in the exceptional circumstances that we are in. So we need to see it in a context.
And we leave it there. Thank you very much, Mr. Anil Padmanabhan, senior journalist. Thank you very much for joining us and putting all this into context for us. Now, Prime Minister Narendra Modi will attend the Women Empowerment Mahasammelan organized on the occasion of the 300th birth anniversary of Lokmata Devi Ahilyabai in Bhopal. This is happening on Sunday. The Prime Minister will also perform a virtual Bhumi Pujan for the construction of a ghat on the Shipra River in Ujjain. About 2 lakh women, entrepreneurs, workers, women self-help groups and Ladli Behna will also be participating in this Mahasammelan. The Prime Minister will also release a postage stamp and a coin dedicated to Lokmata Ahilyabai Holkar. Now, on Saturday, the Prime Minister will also virtually inaugurate passenger service of a super priority corridor of the Indore Metro. This is going to happen from Bhopal. And the super priority corridor is not only important from a technical point of view, it's also symbolizing Indore's growing direction towards modernity. India's External Affairs Minister Jay Shankr addressed the convocation ceremony for foreign national graduates at the Parul University in Vadodara on Friday. He remarked that it has become fashionable in some quarters to adopt an openly transactional approach in international relations.
It has become a fashion in some quarters to be openly transactional when it comes to dealing with other nations. Bear in mind that some are actually practicing it in reality, even while preaching the opposite. There can be a legitimate debate about how best to engage the world. Some of it may be driven by cost benefit, but among certain societies, sentiment and values also count for something. In fact, they count for a lot.
Reflecting the growing maritime security cooperation between India and the European Union, the two sides will conduct a joint naval exercise in the Indian Ocean from June 1st to 3rd. The exercise will focus on advanced counter-piracy operations, interoperability, tactical maneuvers and enhanced communication protocols.
In a significant step towards enhanced maritime collaboration, India and the European Union will hold a joint naval exercise in the Indian Ocean. The exercise will feature ships from the Indian Navy and 2 frigates from the European Union Naval Force Operation Atlanta. The participating EU ships, the Italian frigate Antonio Marseglia and the Spanish frigate Reina Sofia, are currently docked at Mumbai. The joint exercise will be coordinated by the respective maritime operation centers. Rear Admiral David D'Apozzo, Force Commander of the Unit 4 Atlanta, and Hervé Delphin, the Ambassador of the European Union to India, elaborated on the significance of the exercise and the broader EU-India cooperation.
It's the first time that Atalanta units are mooring in Mumbai. We have 2 ships here, so it's a big event in enhancing our cooperation and coordination with the Indian Navy. We share the same values, we share the same goals, which are maritime security in the Indian Ocean. So we are really committed to increase cooperation and coordination, and this exercise will help us in doing this.
I think it stems simply from the recognition of how much our interests intersect in ensuring maritime security. For a very simple reason, I think in the Indo-Pacific, we both see the importance of maintaining free and open and rule-based Indian Ocean access and in the Indo-Pacific access. This is in our economic interest and in our security interest.
Hervé Delphin, the Ambassador of the European Union to India, also reaffirmed EU's strong commitment to combating terrorism. He emphasized that the European Union's recognition of India's right to defend itself and protect its citizens. He noted that Operation Sindoor was a response to the Pahalgam terror attack.
As a strong partner of India, we of course always been standing in contact with India. We made our position very clear, condemning the attack, recognizing the right of India to defend and protect its citizens in such situations.
India and the European Union are steadily enhancing cooperation on maritime security. Both sides share a deep commitment to a free, open, inclusive and rules-based maritime order in the Indo-Pacific region. Shyama Mishra's report for DD India in Mumbai.
Still to come here on DD India Newshour, the holy relics of Lord Buddha will be returning to India Monday. India clinches 3 gold medals in the Asian Athletics Championships in South Korea. You're watching DD India Newshour. I'm Mark Lynn. Imagine a nation where almost everything you do with the government, from filing your taxes to registering a business, happens online in minutes without a single paper form. Well, that's e-Estonia. It's a peek into the future of unparalleled digital convenience and trust. The digital transformation advisor at e-Estonia, Petra Holm, spoke to DD India's Jessica Taneja.
We have with us Petra Holm, who works with e-Estonia. Thank you for taking our time and speaking to us. Begin by telling us what are the benefits of e-residency and what should one be looking out for when applying for one?
E-residency gives an excellent opportunity for people to establish and operate a company in Estonia that gives access to the entire European Union, which is 500 million people, do that fully remotely at a fraction of a cost that usually other countries charge. So roughly it costs less than 300 euro to become an e-resident and to establish a company, and less than 1,000 euro of operational costs annually for an SME with full access to our digital infrastructure, which makes the process of running and establishing a company incredibly smooth. I mean, it takes 15 minutes to establish a company here.
Right, and who can apply for this e-residency, and what is the potential for them in the future if they do apply for one?
There's actually no obligation to establish a company if you want to become an e-resident. An e-residency is a very popular way of people to either just get access to our digital infrastructure because they're curious, or they have the need to sign documents digitally. For example, they could be on a board of an international company here in Estonia while living elsewhere. But currently, every fifth company that is established in Estonia is established by an e-resident because it just gives a lot of flexibility. Becoming an e-resident takes about 2 to 6 weeks. It involves some background checks, so our police and border guard are going to be involved in it. It is very similar to the process of applying for residency in a country. So background checks, I don't know what exactly they're checking, but it takes 2 to 6 weeks, costs less than 300 euro, and is a pretty straightforward process. Almost anyone in the world can apply. Right now, we have more than 185 countries represented in our long list of e-residents.
Right, and I've seen an uptick in Indian entrepreneurs also applying for e-residencies. Tell us about the kind of sectors that they would benefit in case they do take e-residency, and the long-term benefits as well.
There are no limitations in that sense. The most popular companies to be established by e-residents are, maybe it could be solar entrepreneur, digital nomads. It could be telecommunications. It could be actually manufacturing, because even though you're an e-resident, you can still actually hire local people while not being present in the country. It's obviously ICT, so IT services. There are many different varieties. Well, I guess the clearest benefit is that we have zero corporate tax. So the company that is established in Estonia is not necessarily liable to pay any income tax on the profits that are reinvested. So, I mean, we're getting into the area of international taxation. It can depend on the double taxation avoidance treaties between, for example, Estonia and India. I'm not able to comment on that. I'm not a lawyer. But mostly it is just really affordable and really easy to do a business here. There are no obligations. Again, you don't have to renew your e-residency if you are not interested in it. Otherwise, you will have to do it in 5 years' time if you're still interested.
The revered holy relics of Lord Buddha will return to India on Monday by an Indian Air Force aircraft and will be received at the Palam Air Force Station by officials and senior monks. The relics are escorted by a Government of India delegation led by the Odisha Governor, Dr. Hari Babu. And originally it was set to end on May 21st. The exposition was extended to June 2nd at the Vietnamese government's request because of overwhelming public reverence, drawing over 15 million devotees across 9 cities. Now, after arriving in Delhi, the relics will be displayed at the National Museum on June 3rd, followed by a prayer meeting with senior monks, the IBC Secretary General and diplomats. The next day, they will depart in a presidential cavalcade to Sarnath via Varanasi, where they will be enshrined at the Mulaganda Kutti Vihar, concluding a historic pilgrimage that reaffirmed the Buddha's message of peace and compassion. You're watching DD India News Hour, and let's get you the sports news. India had a remarkable day at the Asian Athletics Championships as they clinched 3 gold medals in Gumi city of South Korea on Friday. Pooja Singh won the gold in the women's high jump event with a personal best of 1.89 meters. She became only the second Indian woman to achieve this feat at the continental level. Bobby Aloysius was the first Indian woman to bag a gold in the high jump in the year 2000. Now, meanwhile, Gulveer Singh won 5,000-meter race to take his second gold medal of the championship. His double victory is a rare achievement in the Indian distance running. Nandini Agasara clinched the women's heptathlon gold medal, and India's medal tally has now risen to 18, including 8 gold, 7 silvers and 3 bronze medals. India's Satvik Sairaj Rankireddy and Chirag Shetty marched into the semi-finals of the Singapore Badminton Open with a convincing win over the world number 1 Malaysian pair of Go Fei and Noor Izuddin. This happened on Friday. Satvik and Chirag beat their opponents 21-17, 21-15. The first game saw Satvik and Chirag lead 11-8 at the interval and build on it to take the opener. Although the Indian badminton players trailed 6-5 early in the second game, they seized control of the proceedings soon after and sealed the match. They will face 2-time Olympic bronze medalist Aaron Chia and So Woo Yik of Malaysia in the semi-finals. The Indian boxers Kiran and Deepak, they advanced into the finals of the Thailand Open International Boxing Tournament with convincing victories in their respective semi-final bouts in Bangkok on Friday. In the women's category, Kiran delivered a composed and dominant performance to outclass Ukraine's Polina Chernin with a 5-0 verdict. And in the men's division, Deepak, he continued his strong run by defeating Thailand's Pirapat Yasu, and he won also with a 5-0 margin. Deepak maintained tactical discipline and capitalized on scoring opportunities. Priya and Sane, they settled for bronze medals after losing their respective semi-final bouts. The world number 1, Aryna Sabalenka, charged into the 4th round of the French Open on Friday with a 6-2, 6-3 win over the Serbian Olga Danilovic. Sabalenka kept alive her hopes of winning her maiden Roland Garros trophy. This is after major successes at the Australian Open and the US Open. The 3-time Grand Slam champion looked in ruthless form. The Olympic champion Zheng Qinwen became the first woman to qualify for the French Open last 16 after a 6-3, 6-4 win over the Canadian teenager Victoria Mboko. The Chinese 8th seed Zheng has won 9 successive matches at Roland Garros following her run in the Olympic gold. She won the Olympic gold last year. The 3-time reigning champion Iga Swiatek battled past the Romanian Jacqueline Christian 6-2, 7-5 to reach the 4th round. Swiatek increased her winning run at the French Open to 24 matches as she looks to become the first woman to win 4 successive titles in Paris in over a century. In the men's singles, Italian Lorenzo Musetti, he rallied from a set down and he broke his ticket. He booked his ticket, in fact, to the 4th round. Musetti won 4-6, 6-4, 6-3, 6-2 against the unseeded Argentine Mariana Navone. India's Deaf cricket team clinched the T20 series against Trinidad and Tobago 3-0. In the final match of the series, Trinidad and Tobago won the toss and invited India to bat. The visitors scored 203 runs for the loss of 5 wickets in the stipulated 20 overs at the Queen's Park Cricket Ground. In reply, Trinidad and Tobago were all out for just 60 runs, losing the match by 143 runs. The Indian batsman Abhishek Singh, who notched up 48 runs, was chosen as the man of the match, and the Indian captain Virender Singh was named man of the series. Well, that's all we have in this edition of DD India Newshour. Let us know your thoughts on the news of the day. You can contact us on our social media platforms, and also the DD India mobile app is available on both Android and iOS platforms. You can scan the QR code and download it. We'll be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. I'm Mark Lynn. From all of us here in Delhi, thank you very much for watching us on DD India Newshour. Namaskar.